Hello and welcome to Wineskins, a program that features the lives of the saints and reflections on the Sunday readings, along with information on a variety of topics and issues from a Catholic perspective. I'm Father Jim Korda. Our program is brought to you through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. Our interview today will feature Dan Wakefield. We will also get a glimpse into the life and times of St. Francis Xavier Cabrini, along with reflections on the readings for this 32nd Sunday in Ordinary Time. That and more on Wineskins. To tell us more about Veterans Day is Father Mike Mikstay. With me now is Father Mike Mikstay, who is the pastor of Our Lady of Victory in Andover and St. Patrick's in Kinsman. Welcome to Wineskins.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
You know, in a couple of days, we're going to celebrate Veterans Day, and you are a veteran, retired Navy chaplain, and I think I'd like to get your take on why it's important for us to remember and to celebrate Veterans Day.
Well, I guess one of the most important things that we understand about our nation is that freedom is not free, and that there has been, throughout our history, a number of people who have given their lives to serve for their country in war and outside of war, and that we enjoy many of those freedoms because of the people who came before us. And as we go into the future, hopefully those people will continue to serve and maintain our liberties that we have in this great nation.
All of us know people who are veterans, whether it's our parents or aunts and uncles or siblings. Why is it important for us to remember those people who have given their time and their service to the safety and the welfare of our country? And oftentimes we hear nowadays that veterans are forgotten. Is that true, or is that something we really need to keep in the forefront?
I think that our nation has taken steps, especially this current president, President Trump, to deal with veterans affairs issues that have plagued us for some years. My own estimation is that service that we receive from the VA has increased and become better over the last several years. I've only been retired now for 3 years, but in those 3 years, I believe that opportunity for outside care, if the VA is filled with appointments to go to an outside source, a doctor or some sort of practitioner, has really increased in the efforts to make our veterans' health care just top-notch.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about healthcare, because that, as many people say, is really kind of a right for citizens, but especially our veterans. You know, oftentimes we see or hear stories about homeless veterans or those who have come back and are with PTSD. What are some things that we can do as everyday citizens to kind of be aware and to be more sensitive to those needs?
As far as the homeless veterans go, I know that the VA does have traveling vans which go around to ask those who are on the streets for anything that might be available to them to better their situation. The VA does try to get those homeless off of the streets. The scars that veterans have, especially from our recent wars, are physical, but there are mental and there are emotional and there are moral scars that exist. And a lot of times when you see someone who is perhaps handicapped or physically missing a limb, that's pretty obvious. But there are those of us who suffer in other ways that make re-entry into society very difficult. And so unless you are attuned to that, you're going to think that people are okay and have no issues.
You know, oftentimes when you talk to or are in the company of someone who's been in war or a veteran, they oftentimes hesitate really talking about their experience. Is that for any particular reason?
Well, I think some of that has to do with the fact that it is not pleasant, and that when we do talk about those, it resurfaces and brings back sometimes nightmares. But there are other times when people feel that families and loved ones are very much interested in supporting and helping a veteran. But as I said one time in another interview, it's sometimes more comfortable to sit at the VFW drinking beer with others who have been through the same experience than it is with family members who, although are very concerned have no idea and understanding of what people have been through in the horrors of war.
Just one final comment to the folks that are with us, and especially our veterans who are listening in and who will be celebrating, hopefully, this coming Wednesday.
Well, we have a great nation. It's always wonderful to hear people thank me for my service and to know that this nation has supported veterans throughout history. And even over in theater, we receive so many gifts and so many things to share with those of us who are over in combat zones. The people of our nation's military do know that we are very much supported.
Father Mike Mikstay, it's a pleasure to have you on Wineskins and also to lift up and to celebrate Veterans Day this coming Wednesday. For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. St. Francis Xavier Cabrini was a virgin and religious. To tell us more is Lou Jacquet. He is from St. Brendan Church in Youngstown.
St. Francis Xavier Cabrini is the first citizen of the United States to be canonized a saint. The process began only 11 years after her death, and she was canonized on June 7, 1946. Born prematurely in Lombardy, Italy, she was baptized Francesca, and from the age of reason fervently desired to be a missionary. After applying to interreligious life in several communities and always being turned down because of her frail health, she was advised by her bishop to start a religious community herself. As a result, she founded the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart and received approval in 1889 by Pope Leo XIII to go to the United States, where there were many Italian immigrants. Within a few months after the arrival of the first group of sisters, Mother Cabrini had already opened an orphanage and a school. She became a naturalized citizen in 1909, and during the remainder of her life, she founded a total of 67 charitable institutions and houses of her congregation. During her lifetime, she obtained a number of special favors through her prayers. She died in Chicago just before Christmas in 1917. The opening prayer of the Mass makes specific reference to the fact that Mother Cabrini went from Italy to the United States to serve the immigrants. Her heart had been set on going to China, but both her bishop and Pope Leo XIII had insisted that the missionaries of the Sacred Heart should work in the United States. Mother Cabrini traveled back and forth to Italy more than 25 times, bringing back other sisters for the ever-expanding apostolate. Our petition in the opening prayer is that from the example of St. Francis Xavier Cabrini, we may learn concern for the stranger, the sick, and the frustrated. In spite of her poor health, Mother Cabrini was a veritable dynamo of energy. At the same time, she was a woman of deep prayer and union with God. Her motto was taken from St. Paul, "I can do all things in Him who strengthens me." The example of St. Francis Cabrini is especially relevant to Catholics in the United States today. Her devotion to the service of the poor, the underprivileged, and the sick should prompt many individual Catholics to become active in works of charity for the needy. Moreover, in view of the tensions and prejudice that foster racial injustice, Mother Cabrini can help us to see Christ in all the men and women we meet. The opening prayer reads, "God our Father, you called Francis Xavier Cabrini from Italy to serve the immigrants of America. By her example, teach us concern for the stranger, the sick, and the frustrated. By her prayers, help us to see Christ in all the men and women we meet." For Wineskins, I'm Lou Jacquet.
Joining me is Dan Wakefield, who is the director of the Ursuline Sisters HIV Ministry. Welcome back to Wineskins.
Thank you so much, Father. It's great to be here again.
You know, this wonderful ministry that the Ursuline Sisters started over 25 years ago is still going and growing strong. We would be remiss if we did not give a nice shout out to Sister Kathleen Minchin, who began the ministry. Talk about her and why it was in her heart to begin this.
Sister Kathleen began the Ursuline Sisters HIV Ministry back in 1993. At the time, she had encountered people living with HIV and some of the work that she was doing, some of the pastoral work. And she saw that many of them were isolated, many of them were fearful. At that time, it was a death sentence, so many people knew that they were going to be dying. And she recognized that locally, there really wasn't resources for people. And so she decided to do something about that. And so initially she began a prayer support group, and she began it with 3 other Ursuline sisters, Sister Mary Lee Nally, Sister Nancy Dawson, and Sister Pauline Dalby. And they began that prayer support group. And over time, they identified other needs that people had. And so that grew then to include our food pantry, our Angela's Place pantry of personal hygiene products, and eventually grew to include the clinic, our children's program, and our housing program. Sister Kathleen led the ministry for 24 years before retiring in 2017, and she really provided the guiding principles for how we treat people, how we deliver the services that we deliver, and provided that inspiration for so many staff members to see this is how you treat people, and this is the way that we do things. Often in our ministry, we say that the way that we do things, we do so in a way as if we were doing it for a family member of ours. And I think that is in large part because of Sister Kathleen's example.
It's interesting as you talk, and you've been on our show before, we always use that word ministry. It's more than just a job. It's really using our hands and our hearts and our feet as if they were the Lord's. And how important is it for us whenever we do the work of the kingdom to know that this is Jesus' work. This is us joining with him. And especially in work sometimes that people do not find appealing or tasteful.
Well, I think that it's so essential to always remember that and to have as our bedrock the gospel and Jesus' message. I think that, in ministry work, you have such difficult days, whether it's because of the challenges that people experience in poverty, whether it's the challenges that come with mental illness or substance use, or, in our case, sometimes we still see, obviously, death and sickness and illness. And so that can all be so challenging. And so to be reminded of the role that we have to be Christ on earth here, so critical and so important, especially for people who might have felt isolated or disconnected.
Let's talk about some of those specific services that this ministry provides, whether it's medical or testing or spiritual or prayerful. List some of those services and how people are served through them.
Sure. So we have an adult and pediatric HIV clinic. We do HIV testing there. We have case management. We have social workers. We have counselors. And so people are able to receive quality and compassionate HIV care and receive their medications regardless of their ability to pay or not, because over 80% of the clients we do serve live in poverty. And so we're aware of that. So we really try to identify what needs they have, and we provide wraparound services, as it's called. So if someone has issues because they don't have transportation, we're able to provide transportation to get them to and from their doctor's appointments, which is so critical and so important. In addition to the clinic, we have our children's program, which is for children living with or affected by HIV. Nowadays, because of medical advancements, we do see fewer children living with HIV. So that's wonderful news. But we have many kids who are affected, their parents or maybe is a sibling who has HIV. So at our children's program, we do after-school tutoring 3 nights a week, and we have a summer program for the children. And then we do a monthly play group for the kids too. We also make sure they're set up for success in school. We provide school supplies and other necessities that they might have. And then we do a monthly social support group and congregate meal for people that are living with HIV. They come and they enjoy a warm meal. We distribute from our pantries at that event, so they receive food and they receive soaps and personal hygiene products. And then we most recently went into housing. And so we have both an emergency shelter and permanent supportive housing for people who are HIV positive and who have a history of homelessness.
That's wonderful. I think the other thing that I'd like us to talk about in the last few minutes is this whole stigma. You would think over these many years that would have waned or dissipated, but sometimes it hasn't. Talk about that stigma of the HIV/AIDS epidemic that people are still fearful of.
As you mentioned early on, there was a huge stigma associated with HIV, and unfortunately, it's kind of lasted. I think in part that's because for many people, the last time they remember hearing about HIV or AIDS was probably in the 1980s. And so for many people, they don't recognize or realize the changes that have been made over that time. Some of those changes are in the sense of, we are serving more people that are African American, that are straight, that are women. And so I think that for many people, if they aren't educated about HIV, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's just a lack of understanding. What we have tried to do is we try to educate the community about HIV and what it means. And we've tried to, through the wonderful assistance of people in our ministry living with HIV who are willing to tell their stories, we've tried to utilize that to break down stigma as well for people.
Let's talk about that wonderful prayer support that the Ursuline sisters personally provide. Why is prayer so important when we're talking about longevity of a ministry?
Well, I think that it's so important because, again, it grounds you. It helps to remind you again of, on those bad days, it reminds you that, we're going to pick ourselves back up and tomorrow we're going to try it again with the help of God. And it reminds us again of how we go about doing the services that we provide. What sets us apart as Ursulines is the manner in which we do things because of our belief and our faith in God and how things should be done. It's so crucial and so critical. For the people we serve, it's also so important to have that presence for many people that feel that they're alone, or for many people that feel isolated, to know that they have people praying for them. It's so crucial and so important for them too.
Tell the folks that are with us what they can do, who can they contact if they would like more information, or if they'd like to volunteer.
Sure. You can always reach out to us at 330-793-0434, or you can gather more information, including expressing an interest in volunteering if you so choose, from our website, which is UrsulineSistersAids.org.
Dan Wakefield, Director of the Ursuline Sisters AIDS Ministry, thank you so much for your presence on Wineskins, and thank you and the Ursulines for doing such wonderful ministry.
Thank you so much, Father. God bless you.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. For more information and to listen to Wineskins, visit the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown at www.doy.org. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Christopher Minutes. Thoughts on making every day count. Here's Monsignor Jim Lisanti.
On February 3, 1966, U.S. Navy Captain Gerald Coffey was flying a reconnaissance mission off the coast of North Vietnam. When he lost control of his aircraft, he was captured on the ground by North Vietnamese forces. He would spend the next 7+ years in prison. Recalling the experience, the former POW says, "The key to my survival was faith in God above all, but also faith in others and in myself. I learned to appreciate myself and my own humanity." In order to stay focused on his faith, Captain Gerald Coffey created a visual reminder for himself. He says, "The first 2 words I scratched on my cell wall made all the difference. They were 2 words with an equal sign between them. God equals strength." My friends, no matter what your circumstances, you can find strength in God.
Our song today is from the CD entitled Behold, Good for the Soul. It is by David Kauffman, whose music can be found at goodforthesoulmusic.com.
Tremble with fear, and yet our strength, our refuge sure, whispers in our ear. Be still, my love, know that I am God. Be still, my love, know that I am God. Though nations fight, though kingdoms fall, though spiteful hearts will say, be still, my love. Know that I am God. Be still, my love. Know that I am God. Behold the works our Lord has done to change our hearts of stone. God breaks our arrows, God breaks our bows. God calls us chosen, calls us God's own. Be still, my love. Know that I am God. Be still, my love. Know that I am
Our scripture reflections for this 32nd Sunday in Ordinary Time will be done by Deacon Ed Laubacher. He is from St. Paul Church in North Canton.
I often read the questions for the High School Academic Challenge team where I am a teacher. I am often amazed at the knowledge these kids have of various subjects such as art, history, literature, and science. I also find it interesting that certain kids will focus on particular subjects. One of them will be the so-called expert in art, for example, while another will focus on math. Of course, most of these kids are very intelligent. Does this have anything to do with wisdom? In ancient Jewish culture, wisdom was a skill to be earned, a characteristic to be pondered and gathered over experience. Many young people studied under very wise and learned teachers. They would become their disciples and attempt to gain all the wisdom the older sage had learned over his or her lifetime. Our reading today points out that wisdom is highly prized and is simply waiting for us to discover. Wisdom will be gathered by those who pursue it and is given to those who seek it. In ancient Jewish literature, the primary characteristic of wisdom was seeking the Lord, of striving to know His ways. Wisdom was to be found and then lived by following His commandments and statutes. Our responsorial psalm today captures this so well when it states, "O God, you are my God whom I seek. My flesh pines and my soul thirsts." Our psalmist is seeking the wisdom of God, is desperate to feel the presence of God all around him and within him. Now, I have no idea if our psalmist was smart, but he certainly possesses a lot of wisdom regarding our God. The psalmist views his Creator as a powerful, benevolent Lord worthy of praise and thanksgiving. But this wisdom must also extend to living out the commandments for our psalmist and living out the gospel for those who follow Christ. And this is where our 5 foolish virgins in our gospel parable have faltered. While all 10 of the virgins arrived with good intentions and wished to celebrate the bridegroom, only 5 had the wisdom and fortitude to persist on their journey. The oil represents the actual living out the gospel, following the Messiah in all his ways. All 10 followed for a short time, but only 5 finished living their lives this way. It can be so easy to switch around our priorities, to lose our focus in following our Lord, to drift off course and not stay focused on the prize. The wedding feast is truly the prize, and we do not want to be locked out of the celebration. Keeping our lamps fully prepared, full of oil, and ready at a moment's notice is a warning from Jesus. What should we make of the 5 with oil not sharing with the others? It is not a lack of charity from the prepared 5. It is not a selfishness that is acceptable. But good works are not transferable. We each choose to follow Christ or not. It is our own response that is paramount. Choose today to have the wisdom to seek the Lord while he may be found. Choose today to serve the Lord with your whole heart, mind, and strength. Perhaps it is best to paraphrase what Joshua said to the Israelites nearly 3,000 years ago. If serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Nothing else is really worth our total effort. For Wineskins, I'm Deacon Ed Laubacher.
Jesus wanted people to be good. He also wanted people to be wise. We can learn from each other and be inspired by each other. Let us build a reserve of wisdom and carry it throughout our life's journey. Wineskins is made possible by the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. Wineskins is produced by CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. I'm Father Jim Korda, thanking you for being with us. Have a blessed Sunday. And we of CTNY want to send prayers and best wishes to all the veterans and to thank them for their service.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I bought her an orchid.
What have I done for my marriage today? I sent my husband a love email.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. But she's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Make a change for the better. Need help? Go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
They say America is the land of opportunity, but for some, life isn't so easy. Right now in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. That's nearly 13 million children of all races, all across our country. Where do you draw the line and get involved? You can make a difference in more ways than you think. Go to povertyusa.org today, because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.